The opening of the Tate Gallery in St.Ives shows the importance of Cornwall in British art history. From Victorian times, the county has been the base for a number of internationally recognised schools of art.
Humorous, quaint and pathetic are the little irresponsible folk, the volunteer models of the village and countryside. Dear little people. To the painter who goes back year by year to the same hunting grounds, the memory of them becomes glorified and tender. The little sunburnt faces and the little calico frocks become as much part of the bright landscape as the patches of pink thrift in the clefts of the granite boulders. And one marks the flight of the years with their changing. The yellow-haired baby of one summer is the sturdy brown-legged urchin of the next. Still a little younger, and the little schoolgirl with a pinafore and satchel is found again in the slim young matron, mothering a yellow-haired baby in her turn. The children change, but always the same wind ruffles the dry grass on the hillside and drives the strong blue waves in to break on the shores.
Canadian-born artist Elizabeth Armstrong, who married Stanhope Forbes to become leading figures in Cornwall's first art school, centred around Newlyn. Both the landscape and the people of the county drew the painters, as Alison Bevan of the Penlee Gallery in Penzance explains.
In the 1880s, artists mostly from Britain came to Newlyn, having spent time in Brittany. And they were influenced by the French style of painting, but also by the kind of subject matter that Brittany had to offer. And of course, the light that Brittany had to offer. And when they came to Newlyn, they discovered that here on their doorstep, a train ride from London rather than inconvenient channel crossing away, there was the same sort of light, this pure, clear light. There was the same sort of subject matter available to them of fishing and farming, subjects untouched by the Industrial Revolution, stories that they could tell. And like spirits, because people came here en masse. And as the colony grew, so the school of painting, the ethos developed, that they were influenced by the French style of painting and they rubbed off each other, and they were not only painting the same sort of subject matter, but painting them in the same sort of way as artists, portraying real life events, real people in their natural environment, painted en plein air, out in the open air. Things changed very rapidly in the 1880s and 1890s, but when the artists arrived, there was much that could have been, a century previously.
It was a nostalgic view then, perhaps, of the world.
It was almost willfully nostalgic in some cases. They knew that they were recording something that was going to disappear. There was going to be an impact of change, as there had been in the rest of Britain. But here there were these people who had unchanged values and more or less unchanged lives. Here we have a very monochrome painting, which is actually more representative of the palette of the early arrivals in Newlyn. But this is by Norman Garstin, the Rain It Raineth Every Day, and it's one of our really much-loved paintings. Looking at it today, it looks so safe, so traditional, that you'd really find it very hard to believe that these artists were challenging the establishment. They really were the anti-establishment figures of their day. You think about Damien Hirst or Tracy Emin or whatever, and they are now establishment figures. They're shown in the Royal Academy and so on. But the Newlyn artists, were the real bad boys of art. They were rejected by the Royal Academy because the style was seen as being too French. And you look at the Rain It Raineth Every Day, and you can see so many resonances with both what the French artists themselves were doing. I mean, the figure here could almost be Renoir, but also with what was influencing the French artists, Japanese printmaking. This very spare composition with a great area of blank canvas almost in the middle where the wet pavement is shimmering. This painting now draws its own audience from literally all over the world. We know every time it is off the wall, we'll get people complaining that they've come all the way from Botswana or wherever, especially to see it. But in its day, it was rejected not only by the establishment, but also by the town.
We had suddenly entered paradise, a densely wooded valley filled with lichen-covered trees of a greenish grey, whose branches threw a bluish tracery of shadow over the rich tufts of grass, already speckled with the yellow of early primrose and white anemone. Violet-tinted grey granite boulders bordered a stream that found its way to Lamorna Cove.
Laura Knight remembering her first visit to Lamorna Cove at the turn of the 20th century. She joined John Lamorna Birch to take art in a new direction.
With the second generation came another subtle change in the work, or perhaps not so subtle change in the case of Lamorna Birch particularly, in that in the 1890s through into the very early 1900s, the palette tends to be very muted. But you go into the 20th century and suddenly the colour vamps up. And particularly Lamorna Birch, his colours are so bright and vibrant. And of course, when we think of Laura Knight, we think of the figures in red standing on the cliff top against a clear blue sea. And it's that second colony that really changed the shape of the painting that we know as the Newlyn School. Strictly speaking, we should talk about two colonies, and the first is the Newlyn and the second is the Lamorna. But the terms are more about time and style than about geography. The same applies to the St.Ives School. At the same time as the artists were here in Newlyn or along the coast in Lamorna, there were artists in St.Ives, and parts of those colonies were living in St.Ives and working in St.Ives and in Carbis Bay and in Lelant and Hale and so on. What made the colony's name was that sort of coherent vision and social group, the fact that they came together as an entity.
The Lamorna group were also colourful people as well as having a colourful palette.
They certainly were, and whereas the first flowering of the Newlyn School or colony came and documented the lives of real people, the Lamorna group tended to arrive as these sort of bohemian figures and live fairly wild lives for the time, and brought in models. And of course, Laura Knight caused outrage and shock by having models posing nude on the cliff top. And at this time, several of the models that she would have brought down from London would have been prostitutes, because those were the people that didn't mind standing with no clothes on. So there was an outcry, and her landlord was approached by some local ladies and tried to persuade him to throw her out and get rid of her from the village. And he must have quite liked having these ladies standing around naked on his land, and gave her a studio instead.
After those strenuous exertions, let's relax now in the serenity of another seaside town. Once merely a cosy little fishing port, but today proud of its reputation as perhaps the world's most distinguished art colony. The county is Cornwall, and the place, yes, you're right, is St.Ives.
A Pathé newsreel from the 1950s celebrating the best-known art location. What is its origin? I asked Roy Ray, painter and trustee of the St.Ives School of Painting.
At the outbreak of the war, Ben Nicholson and his wife Barbara Hepworth moved to St. Ives away from London, and with the potter Bernard Leach, they formed a sort of nucleus of modern thinking in arts, so that in the immediate years after the war, people didn't want to necessarily set up studio in London. A lot of them came this way, having had this nucleus here for a few years. And so it became the birthplace of modern British painting.
Why did they develop this abstract art?
Well, it's part of the evolution of art in this country. Ben Nicholson, in his years before the war in North London, was moving away from figurative painting. There was abstract painting going on throughout the country, although we lagged seriously behind what was happening in Europe. But these artists were aware of what had been happening in the pre-war years in Europe, so this was the natural place for it to develop.
We lived in white houses with large new windows. We ate simple food, the fruits of the earth. We wore sandals and ran barefoot along the boulevards. We talked in the cafes of the new vision, the new scale of music, the new architecture, and unnecessary things were to be done away with, and all was to be functional. How young we were.
The early idealism of the avant-garde remembered by artist Winifred Nicholson.
practically every form of art is represented at St.Ives by their true masters. For example, this is the studio of one of our greatest potters, Bernard Leach, who, using the traditional English potter's wheel, combines the best of East and Western influences in works of art that are universally revered. A stone's throw away, past the studios of countless lesser-known artists, we find sculptress Barbara Hepworth, CBE, in her garden, working for a change in wood. A 200-weight piece of elm, which will take her about 3 weeks to chisel into one of the contemporary shapes for which she is famous. Most of her best work is, of course, in public collections and the like in different parts of the world. But those in her garden include, in concrete, forms in movement, in bronze, figure Oread, in plaster, called simply oval sculpture, and in mahogany, reclining figures.
Is there still a definable St.Ives art school now?
Probably not in that sense. That the art that's being produced in St. Ives is extremely diverse. It's very contemporary. I think it's very high quality art, and but you couldn't say there's an actual movement, St. Ives movement. But, you know, many galleries from around this country come to St. Ives to put exhibitions together. And there are a large number of exhibitions throughout the year in St. Ives that show this work.
Is that because St. Ives is now an established brand name?
I think if you ask most people in the country what they know about St. Ives, they'd say it's a small fishing port in West Cornwall, famous for its artists. Now, they may not know which artists were here and when and what they painted, but it does have this reputation, which I think is what pulls people here in the art context.
And of course you can come to St. Ives now and do some painting yourself.
Oh yes, there's a well-established school of painting here. It's been here since the 1930s, and visitors to St. Ives can drop into a class, maybe one of our evening classes or a Saturday class, or if they know about it in advance of their visit, they can book a short or a long course with us. We do 3-day and 6-day courses.
Richard Cook, based in Newlyn, is one of the many artists continuing Cornwall's artistic tradition. Do you find the environment, the landscape of Cornwall particularly inspiring?
It's a question I am asked quite often, whether the landscape is inspiring. I think the short answer is no, because in fact the inspiration to paint and to express oneself comes from inside rather than from the outside. However, I find myself in Cornwall in a landscape that I find echoes something of my own needs, and I love the fact that it's untrammeled in some senses. I'm always out with my wife, and we find Neolithic flints and stone tools in the landscape, in the plough and so on, and somehow in the stone circles. And I do get the feeling that the presence of our ancient ancestors is very much, or literally on the surface really in Cornwall. So there's a sort of energy here that I find attractive, which I would have been appalled at saying maybe a few years ago, but it does exist. And also being so near the Atlantic, or surrounded by Atlantic, the light is very, very strange. And again, not something I would have subscribed to when I lived in London, that notion. But in fact, it has a sort of an addiction to it, living so near the sea. And that compels me to stay, I believe.
So you believe the light in Cornwall is palpably different from other places in Britain?
Reluctantly, I would say yes, it is. Because I say reluctant because I'm very loath to be fey about these things. But you know, if you go to the Scillies, where the sea is very, very shallow, there is a very, very strange sense of the light there, which also exists in Penwith, and I think is unique.
Your interest is not of the sort of twee ports and such like many of the commercial painters look at?
No, it's not. I'm not attracted to the picturesque. I, in a way, take from the landscape what I need, and I think the areas of Cornwall, particularly Penwith, which are the moorland, the cliffs, the sea, the expanse, the emptiness, is very, very attractive to me. I probably couldn't exactly say why, but it's probably some sort of quite primitive response that possibly we all carry about landscape.
70 years ago, two famous artists, Whistler and Sickert, literally discovered St.Ives. Attracted first by the quality of the light, unique in its constant blue, its clarity and its power. Their service to the world of art can never be forgotten. For today, the heritage of St.Ives is something for which the nation can be proud.
Above all, Cornwall is known for its beaches. Days on a deck chair or with a bucket and spade are enjoyed by thousands, as is surfing, which was first introduced to Britain in Cornwall.
Sand in the sandwiches, wasps in the tea, sun on our bathing dresses, heavy with the wet, squelch of the bladder wrack waiting for the sea, fleas round the tamarisk, an early cigarette.
Memories of seaside holidays in Cornwall are precious to many, including John Betjeman, who lived and died in the county and is buried in the church of St. Enodoc. Cornwall has great beaches as well as beautiful isolated coves to explore, dramatic cliffs and rocky shorelines, great for rock pooling. Matt Slater of the Blue Reef Aquarium in Newquay describes some of the creatures to be found.
We've got some rock pool tanks here in front of us, and you can see these beautiful coloured anemones. We've got sea urchins, little starfish, and it really is surprising. All of these are local.
Strikingly colourful, aren't they?
That's right. We've got these beautiful sort of pinky, sort of greeny coloured snake-locked sea anemones. Now, obviously, if you're a fish, you wouldn't go anywhere near one. But if I just touch one, you can actually you can see it sticking onto my finger. It's trying to inject me now with poison. Fortunately, human skin is a lot thicker than fish's skin, so none of our local anemones are dangerous. But they, they look like flowers, but they're actually pretty nasty to fish. They eat them.
We've got some sea urchins here.
Yeah, it's a little sea urchin, and believe it or not, it's in the same family as a starfish sea urchin. If you imagine a starfish folded up into a ball, underneath you've got a mouth with 5 grinding teeth that they use to grind algae from rocks. Very, very spiky characters of sea urchin. So it eats at the bottom there, underneath is the mouth, and then on the top, that's actually the other end. So that's where it comes out.
So its bottom's on its top?
Basically, yeah. Now here we've got a load of brittle stars, and if I just pick one of these ones up, see how wriggly they are.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, it's moving. It's like a sort of submarine spider for those who like that sort of thing.
Kind of, yeah. It's got 5 legs, and they're really wriggly, much faster than a normal starfish. And around here, some parts of the seabed are absolutely smothered in these prehistoric creatures, brittle stars. In fact, you can find these in the fossil record. They go back millions of years.
The arms are sort of twisting and turning, a bit serpent-like.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, some people call them serpent stars for that reason. Yeah, beautiful things.
Now this is a very popular one with the children. There's lots of fish coming up to the surface.
Yeah, the stingrays we've got swimming around in here are really quite tame, and they come up to the surface looking for food. Beautiful fish.
So we've also got some, looks like shark.
Yeah, swimming around in here we've got some smoothhound sharks, which are quite a small species of shark. They only grow to, there we go, about 3 foot, just over 1 metre long. And luckily they're not dangerous. People all think most sharks are dangerous, but it's none of the sharks we find around here are dangerous. But it is surprising that 27 species of shark have been found around the Cornish coast.
We've got a shoal of the local mackerel, very distinctive, stripy zebra sort of coats.
That's right. If you go out on a fishing trip from Cornwall, these are the fish that you're most likely to catch. Mackerel are very abundant around the coast in huge shoals. And I must admit, I've gone off seafood since I've been working here at the aquarium, funny that, but I still like a bit of mackerel, because mackerel is very, very good for you. It's full of omega-3 oil, which is very healthy, and the stocks of mackerel are very, very healthy around the coast, so it's always better to go for fish that aren't sort of threatened and stocks are very sustainable.
Not all the fish around the coast are as benign, though.
No, over here we've got quite a nasty species of fish. It's very common around here in sandy bays. Hiding under the sand is the weaver fish. And if you're unlucky enough to tread on a weaver fish, It's a very painful experience. They've got a poisonous dorsal spine that folds up and stabs into your foot and injects you with a dose of venom. Fortunately, not poison enough to actually kill you, but it can be very, very painful.
Seahorses are particularly popular.
Yeah, these are fantastic creatures, seahorses. They're there's two types we find around here, the spiny seahorse and the short-snouted seahorse. They're a real mixture of different animals. They've got a head like a horse, a tail like a monkey, and a pouch like a kangaroo, and it's the pouch that the male actually uses to look after the babies. So in effect, the male is the one that gets pregnant.
It's famous for that, the bit of role reversal.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of women who visit the aquarium think that's a brilliant idea, but you don't see so many of the blokes agreeing.
For those interested in nature, the Cornish coast has much to offer, and the Lizard Peninsula is particularly rich. For botanists, Kynan's Cove supports a large number of species, including three-lobed crowfoot, prostrate asparagus, and pygmy rush. Some wonderful marine life can be spotted off the coast, such as basking sharks, minke whales, and even orcas. The Helford Estuary is home to the National Seal Sanctuary, well worth a visit, especially at feeding time. And for the ornithologists, there's an abundance of species: gannets, guillemots, razorbills, and Manx shearwaters, as well as the only example of the chough, Cornwall's national symbol. Here's Stuart Croft of the RSPB.
The chough used to be far more common down here in the southwest, and then declined to become extinct in the 50s, and in recent years a pair have now taken up territory and now breed at Lizard Point and have done for the past 4 years.
So we're only talking about one breeding pair in the whole of Cornwall?
That's right, it's the only breeding pair, not just in Cornwall but also in England, and as I say, they've been breeding for 4 years and have produced 15 young in that time, and they're purely wild birds. We don't know where they came from, but it seems that they're here to stay.
Why did they disappear in the first place?
It's thought that they mainly declined and became extinct due to a lack of suitable habitat, and that was linked to the management of the land. They do have specialist requirements. They need to feed upon short sward grassland or areas of bare earth where they can get to their invertebrate food. And so with its thought of demise in grazing animals, that led to the habitat becoming unsuitable.
And it's not actually a seabird then?
It's not at all a seabird, no. It's just a member of the crow family that happens to live by the sea, because its requirements are here. It's nesting habitat and the feeding habitat. So, yeah, it's very good habitat down here that it's got.
Okay. Are there any plans to introduce more pairs?
Not as far as we are concerned, no. We're going to see how these birds get on, and hopefully they'll continue to prosper. And with the chance of newcomers coming in all the time, then hopefully they will start to repopulate the county.
Causing a lot of interest with birdwatchers and such like?
Yeah, they're certainly very popular. We've certainly been running a watch point down here where we invite people to come and see the birds, and we can show them each spring, and that's proved very popular. We can tell them all about them, show them the birds, and they get a better understanding of what they require and how they're doing.
Good place for bird watching in general, this area?
It's a very good area. You've got variety of habitats, which is always very good, and on the coast, on the south coast, it's always got a good chance of migrants passing through, so you never know what you're going to see, really.
Full-board surfing first came to Britain at Newquay. Jimmy Dix, a dentist who enjoyed bodyboarding during holidays in the town, had seen pictures of surfboards and, in 1937, wrote to Hawaii to ask for advice on how to build one. By return, and showing what a friendly dude society surfing has always been, came a 13-foot, 4-metre monster board, 5 inches thick and crafted in tropical hardwood by the then legendary maker Tom Blake. Since then, surfers have scoured Cornwall's coastline looking for the perfect surf. These dudes, dudettes and junior doodles think they may have found paradise in Widemouth Bay.
Started like everybody else in the surf schools, and then progressed.
You got the bug?
Absolutely, it's just complete freedom. It really is. It just even though Mother Nature lets you know who's in charge every now and again, you get battered every now, get flipped a couple of times, but it's just the freedom, being out on the waves. it's just a bit of a rush.
Is this a good place for surfing?
Quite. Sometimes it's okay. Not brilliant.
Why not brilliant then? Why not brilliant?
Sometimes the waves are a bit too strong if you're small.
It's just the best thing in the world I've ever done, I think. It's better than anything ever. Get the best buzz out of it, I think.
Is this a good place for surfing?
Yes, it's one of the best in Cornwall, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't tell everyone. Sorry?
Don't tell everybody.
Oh, okay, keep it a secret.
Yeah, well, it's not that secret, but we like to keep it to ourselves.
Surfing isn't a sport just for the young. John Betchman rode the waves well into his 50s.
I don't know anything so exciting as getting a perfect surf. Timing one's shoot off from the waves. And riding along on the crest and coming far inshore. By Jove, that bald-headed fella beats me.
There are now surfing schools up and down the coast. For example, Adventure International in Bude.
We cater generally for school groups, but obviously throughout the whole of August we deal with family groups that come down. Generally it's the teachers or the pupils that have been here on the school group. They'll come down and enjoy a week-long break with us. We do lots and lots of different activities. Obviously surfing is probably our most popular one, being right bang by Summerleys Beach here. Guys that come down, they can do anything. We've got a range of about 15 activities. Obviously surfing, bodyboarding, climbing, high ropes, abseiling, kayaking, and the list goes on really. We can cater for most things really.
Surfing has got quite a community associated with it.
Yeah, there's obviously a lot of the guys that choose to work here at the centre work here for that reason, the fact that they are right bang on the beach and, you know, like-minded people all working together, and it provides, you know, it brings the group together. The dynamics in the staff block are very much based around the surfing scene.
So it's a social life as much as a sport?
Oh, definitely. For the guys that surf, you know, there's every spare minute really of their day, as soon as they finish work, straight down into the wetsuit, run down to the beach, straight into the surf, if there is any. It's, like I say, it's probably the main reason they work here.
Perhaps a bit addictive?
Definitely. The guys that, they're up 5:30 in the morning at times, you know, if the surf's good, and they're still back ready for work at maybe 7:30 or 8 o'clock, you know. It is more a way of life for some of them.
Can I have your attention in the water, please? This is just a call to all people bathing and bodyboarding. The tide is now turning, which might mean the conditions might get a bit tricky with the rips to the north and south of the areas. So
the waves can be hazardous, and the RNLI provides a lifeguard service on many of Cornwall's beaches during the summer months.
Basically, the main hazards in the water are the rips, or like you can see over there is the hole, where the water washes in and it's trying to get back out level again, so it's got to wash back out to sea, and that's basically what a rip is. And a hole is where the rip sort of washes the sand away and the water just sits still in the sea.
So can that catch people out unawares?
Yeah, well, to be honest, if you stay between the flags, like the red and yellow flags for bodyboarders and swimmers, black and white checkered flags for surfboard riders and canoeists, there shouldn't be a problem because we'll set the areas for the safest place in the beach. But people always get caught out if they don't understand about the sea and the flags and certain others.
What can they do if they get caught in a rip?
Basically, we tell them to put, if there's lifeguards on the beach, you put your hand in the air and just stay on your board. If you've got a board with you, just don't panic, just don't get off your board. Stay on that and wait for us to come and get you.
But Cornwall's popularity may be its own undoing. Insensitive development along the coast has worried many, including John Betchman, who voiced his concern in the poem Delectable Duchy. It's vital we preserve the county's best for future generations to enjoy.
In pools beyond the reach of tides, the senior service carton glides, and on the sand the surf line lisps with wrappings of potato crisps. The breakers bring with merry noise tribute of broken plastic toys, and lichened spears of blackthorn glitter with harvest of the August litter. Here in the late October light, see Cornwall, a pathetic sight, raddled and put upon and tired, and looking somewhat overhired, remembering in the autumn air the years when she was young and fair, those golden and unpeopled bays, the shadowy cliffs and sheep-worn ways, the white unpopulated surf, the thyme and mushroom-scented turf, the slate-hung farms, the oil-lit chapels, thin elms and lemon-coloured apples, going and gone beyond recall. Now she's free for one and all.
And the rocks are well designed, as you'd like to be beside the sea, beside the sea.
The name of the Isles of Scilly is thought to come from the Romans, who described them as Sully, the Sun Islands. A visit to this varied and beautiful place is well worth the trip across the water.
Cheers!
Cheers! If you had to choose your favourite, what would it be?
I think the Eastern Isles, actually. I think you miss the Eastern Isles there, because it's beautiful. You've got the seals, you've got the uninhabited islands, and they're just stunning, absolutely stunning.
No, I think the best one's Samson, because it's got a bit of everything. It's got the beaches, it's got the wildlife, and it's got the wonderful atmosphere with the abandoned cottages. It's got to be the best.
I think that's very difficult to say which is the favourite island. They've all got their own personalities or their own differences. I mean, for example, St. Agnes is very rugged. Tresco, I always feel, is a little bit manicured, but it's a beautiful island. St Martin's probably got the best beaches in the islands. Briar, a little bit similar to St Agnes, but it's got places like Hell Bay, which can be very, very spectacular, especially during a winter storm. And then, of course, you've got St Mary's, which is the largest of the islands, but again, got some beautiful beaches, some beautiful coastal walks. So it's very difficult to say which is the best of the islands. I think they're all beautiful.
It's one of the beaches. Ask the locals about their favourite island and you'll get answers as diverse as the landscape. But the sea unites all. The traditional racing of rowing gigs is integral. Ted Molson, Vice Chair of the island's Gig Racing Association.
Gig racing is actually ingrained into society over here. It's not just a sport. Families are painted through with the name of the gig almost. My family in particular are Nornor through and through. We row the Nornor and always have done, and even my children are the same. And my daughter rows in the Nornor. My boy's a novice at the moment. He's rowing in the Tregarthens, but he wants my place when I retire next year. It started off with the original pilotage, the marine pilotage, years and years ago. The marine pilots used to guide the clippers up the channel as far as the Baltic and Norway and what have you. There's a lot of money involved in those days, and as a consequence there was a lot of finance to build the gigs on the islands. There were over 100 gigs on Scilly at one stage, with a pilot on each one. The first pilot that got to the clippers got the revenue, paid the crew, paid the shareholders, everybody was happy.
So it started off as a race for work?
Very much so, and it was reinstigated in Scilly as racing for sport in the 60s, 1960s. It's been going about 40 odd years back as a racing sport.
And friendly rivalry between the islands?
Oh, absolutely. Internecine warfare on the water, but once we get on the beach, we're all buddies again.
Lying within treacherous seas, many ships have floundered on the rocks around Scilly. Wrecks can bring pollution such as oil slicks, as well as more profitable flotsam, as Sonia Scott of the Langstone Heritage Centre explains.
This is the best known shipwreck of all, the Torrey Canyon, which has washed up on the beaches here and made a terrible mess. There was 2,000 gallons of oil that were lost, and 9,800 gallons of kerosene, which floated onto the rocks here and all over Devon and Cornwall also. So we've got in a terrible mess with that. So that's the first thing we've put in the Heritage Exhibition, and that's because that's something that people know about already.
They can remember that. But of course there are many other shipwrecks throughout the centuries.
Absolutely. And if you'd like to walk this way. I just want to work out which ones to show you, really. There are loads. As you can see here, I'm just trying to work out which ones to show you. Our favourite one's got to be the Ceta, which is another modern one. This was in 1997, and the CETA was carrying all sorts of things. It was carrying heavy plant in the form of things like bulldozers and diggers, right down to training shoes and babies' clothes, and you name it, it had everything on board. It crashed on the rocks out here, or floundered on the rocks out off Old Town, and the contents all floated into Scilly, and that included the heavy plant as well. And several islanders have told me that they were very nervous about going to retrieve any of these items. So several of them waited until after dark, wandered down over the top, over the cliffs down to Old Town, there to be met by a sight that looked like Christmas, because there were lights from people's torches all along the coast where everybody else had had the same idea, all come out at night and had gone down and were retrieving the training shoes and the baby clothes and the sports equipment and the heavy plant. There was everything you can think of. It was going to stop shops and all sorts of things.
I think treasure trove.
It was an absolute treasure trove. It was, and people still to this day, if you want a pair of trainers, they say, well, come round to my garage and I'll get you a pair. So that is of huge interest. That's great.
Todd Stevens has been diving the waters for years.
There's about 900 known incidents, shipwreck and maritime incidents, of which only about 250 have been discovered, so there's a lot out there to see.
So there are many undiscovered wrecks, perhaps some treasure wrecks.
Well, of course there is. There's lots of treasure wrecks around Scilly. Lots have been found, but there are still more out there to be discovered. We've found 3 wrecks in the last 2 years, 3 new ones, actually in amongst the islands that people, believe it or not, don't know about. So,
in quite shallow water then?
Yeah, shallow. There's obviously many of them out in deep water, but in amongst the islands nobody's ever really bothered apart from the western rocks. And I've been doing a lot of that in the last few years, and we've been coming up with new sites all the time.
What are some of the things you discovered?
Well, just within this month actually, we were looking for another wreck, and we came across a mysterious one over in the Eastern Isles, and there's no reference to it being there or of any ship carrying the cargo it's carrying of sinking in that position, and it's rather intriguing at the moment, and we're playing with that, trying to discover what it is.
Of course, there's a lot of the sea life underneath the ocean must be very beautiful and diverse as well.
Where it's very tidal, and positions where the tide really moves fast, especially again shipwrecks get absolutely covered in life. The ones that are in dormant water are just like rusting hulks with fish around, but the ones in fast moving water are adorned in anemones of pink and orange, white, dead men's fingers, some of them are called, and they're very beautiful.
Reminders of the past abound on land as well. Catherine Sawyer leads archaeological tours and holidays.
The largest number of sites are from the Bronze Age. We've got 80 or 90 burial chambers, we've got standing stones, and we've also got some settlement sites. And importantly, we have settlement sites made out of stone, so you can still see the huts, whereas in most parts of the British Isles, the huts would have been built of wood. There's nothing to see now.
Of course, you see in the islands that many that are now uninhabited were once fully populated.
Well, that's right. And, of course, the geography has changed dramatically. If we go back to the prehistoric period, there was basically one large island here. So lots of areas that are now under the sea were dry land then. So we also have submerged sites, submerged field boundaries and hut circles that can be seen at low tide.
Oh, so the ancient landscape of the Isles of Scilly will emerge as the tide goes down?
That's right, and there are a dozen or so places around the islands where you can see those submerged sites. The best one is Samson, where you can get up on top of the hill, look down into the bay at Eastporth at low tide and see the field boundaries running out across the sand.
Apart from the prehistoric things to be seen around the islands, it's a fortress as well.
That's right. Really, from the 13th century onwards, the islands have been fortified, but in particular from the mid-16th century, we've got several castles. The Star Castle in particular on St Mary's, an Elizabethan fort built to deal with possible Spanish attack. But then we've got 17th century castles, 18th century fortifications, late 19th century forts, and of course the Second World War pillboxes. So 400 years of defences.
we get here at the island, little black dots whizzing around, which so far seem to have been guillemots and razorbill. There's two coming in on our right, for example. But we'll keep an eye out and see whether there's any puffin in here, because they breed on this island, as do guillemot and razorbill. But certainly the latter two are on the move now, heading off to the open sea.
Boat trips allow you to get close to the wildlife of sea and shore. Will Wagstaff is a local guide.
It's one of the premier bird sites in the country. Apart from the migrants we have, which it's world famous for, we get birds from America, Siberia, anywhere you can care to think of. As long as it migrates, we'll get it. But we also have a very important seabird colony here. It's one of the very few places that has, in Britain, that has a mixture of everything from terns through to shearwaters, puffins, razorbills, the lot. So we do very well for those as well as our rather more famous migrants.
Okay, and native birds?
Native birds, well, the thing that everyone comments on here are song thrushes and sparrows. They haven't declined here as they have in the mainland. You're walking along a path, you walk round the song thrush. He's busy smashing the snail on the path, so you have to go round them. So we do well for what residents we have. We don't have all the residents you have on the mainland. If it's a woodland bird, it's rare here. So you're not going to see woodpeckers and things like that very much.
Any particular treats for bird watchers and other people interested in nature?
Well, I mean, Scilly has got a few curiosities. We have this rare shrew, this lesser white-toothed shrew from southern Europe that is somehow established here. Seals are very popular. Most people like to do a trip to go and look at the Atlantic grey seals. And so you've got the animal side of it. Plant side, we've got some very rare plants here, things like orange bird's foot, which is only found in Scilly, not found anywhere else in Britain. It does occur on the continent as well. And the same can be said for the dwarf pansy we had, which every spring you'll see botanists there on their hands and knees trying to find this tiny member of the viola clan.
Perhaps the ocean's greatest gift is a frost-free climate. Mike Nellams is curator of Tresco Abbey Gardens.
You've got a garden here like no other garden in Britain. We can grow plants from all of the Mediterranean regions of the world outside. If you imagine the Eden Project with the lid off, except that we've been here 170 years. And so all of our plants come from South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, Mexico, California, Chile, all these exotic places, all next to the coast. Well, just sitting where we are, I can see the king protea, which is the largest of all the South African proteas. Also, hummingbird pollinated plants from Chile with these wonderful, great, tall exotic flower spikes. There's a lot of different colours in the garden. We have the reds of the South African succulents, we've got the yellows of the Canary Island plants, the blues from the Canary Islands, wonderful blue spikes of colour. So there's every colour you can think of. You can just sit still and look right the way around and it's just everywhere.
The flora of the Isles of Scilly themselves, they're very special.
They are, because we are 30 miles out into the ocean, and so everything is a sort of one-of in many ways. But the natural flora is very bleak, but what's happened is that garden escapees from the garden have escaped out. So everybody on Scilly have got these exotic gardens with plants from around the world, and then those plants again self-sow themselves into the sand dunes. For instance, we have over 200,000 or 300,000 agapanthus plants in our sand dunes just outside the garden, looking like a natural. Well, they are natural. They've been put there by themselves. Birds have taken seed out and they've propagated naturally, and it's the most magical sight. So you suddenly walk round a corner and what should be a sort of English coastal scene, and suddenly there's this huge thing from Mexico staring you in the face. So it's all very exciting like that.
The island's blossoms have provided a living since Victorian times. Sonia Scott again.
The main industry on the Isles of Scilly used to be the flower industry, and the reason that they grew flowers was because of the very mild climate here in the winter. We don't have any frost and we don't have any snow. And
what sort of flowers are we talking about?
We're talking about daffodils. In those days, these days it's daffodils and pinks. So, very, very sensible weather, nice and warm, lots of flowers here. And they would grow them, pick them, tie them, send them off to market. They'd go off on the boats, get to Penzance, and then be distributed the whole length and breadth of the country. They were very successful because they were very early blooms. There wasn't the competition from Europe that there is now, because you get flowers from abroad at any time of the year, depth of winter. In those days, there wasn't the competition from abroad, so Isles of Scilly flowers were the earliest flowers, and so they made lots of money.
So Liza Doolittle would have known Isle of Scilly flowers.
Absolutely, without doubt. They must have been on the streets of London, without doubt. Farmers nowadays can't afford to compete with the continent, so the farmers have diversified. So they cannot afford to survive on flower money anymore, which is very, very sad.
Pete Hobson has seen potential and has set up one of England's few artisan perfumeries.
The place is actually stacked full of wonderful flowers, so we actually go out and gather, produce and actually manufacture flowers into perfume and all the associated products. So we produce soap, all sorts of different accessories as well. We actually make a lot of products from the lavender that's grown over here. There's quite a big lavender industry, as well as obviously the main industry that we actually use, which is the narcissi and the daffodil industry. So we actually use all the local farmers to actually produce all their dead heads, as it were, all the flowers they can't use. We actually convert them then by actually taking the heads off and putting them into a solvent and extracting the wonderful fragrance from them, and then actually use that in a perfumery context.
Ladies and gentlemen, the helicopter this afternoon is under the command of Captain Ian McDill with a flight time of approximately 20 minutes, flying at a height of 1,500 feet. If I can be of any assistance or answer any questions during the flight, please do not hesitate to attract my attention. Thank you.
You can travel to Scilly by boat, light aircraft and by helicopter. But however you get here, you're bound to want to return to these beautiful islands.
Television cookery programmes and celebrity chefs have increased people's appreciation of regional cuisine. There is now a great demand for high-quality local food, from the traditional pasty to more exotic tastes and flavours.
We have 3 medium meat, please, 1 medium veg and 1 small meat.
Another lunchtime pasty order. More of a national symbol than merely a foodstuff. I asked Anne Muller, Cornwall's undisputed Oggy Queen, what makes the perfect pasty.
A good pasty is made of the very best ingredients. There's simple ingredients, and of course you must make them with tender loving care. Pay attention to the seasoning, make sure you have it in mind that you want someone to enjoy it, and you'll end up with a good product.
There's not much pastry you got there.
Well, our aim is to have well-filled pasties with as thin as possible pastry, and I mean, if you're a connoisseur of pasties, you will certainly enjoy a well-filled pasty with thin pastry rather than vice versa.
You're doing that very deftly with your fingers there.
After 20 years, practice makes perfect.
I've heard that people used to sort of make a sweet pasty and a savoury pasty all in one, sort of like a three-course meal.
This is such a common myth, but personally I feel it's nonsense. No one in my Cornish family have ever produced a pasty like that. They might have made an apple pasty or a jam pasty, but not all in the same, not added to the savoury, traditional classic turnip, onion, beef and potato pasty. It just isn't done.
Pasty's the perfectly packaged convenience food for the tinners to take underground, always leaving a little after lunch for the knockers or the little people, so they won't get into mischief in the mines. But not a food for fishermen. It's said to be unlucky to take a pasty on a boat. Some folk have suggested pasties were a Viking or a Roman invention, but there again the Cornish take on a pastry parcel may have inspired Italian calzone, Argentinian empanadas and Finnish kalakukos. Whatever the truth, trade has certainly added to Cornish cuisine. Saffron buns, sort of jaundiced scones, were the result of commerce with the Mediterranean, and it's been suggested that the great staple of the southwest, clotted cream, was brought over by the Phoenicians. For proof, people point to similar stuff served up in modern-day Lebanon. There's a lot to the traditional cream tea. It can be enjoyed trickled with treacle or golden syrup, known as thunder and lightning. Some say Devon cream is thicker, while the Cornish counter with a thicker crust. Certainly the two counties take their clotted cream rivalry very seriously.
Devonians prefer the cream first. In Cornwall, the cream always goes on top of the jam. The Cornish say that the Devonians want to hide their cream under the jam. I don't know about that. I simply get more cream onto the scone by putting it on first.
Milk has been transformed into a host of different products. There are now many varieties of cheese: Davistow, Menelac and Yarg. The last of these, distinctively wrapped in stinging nettles, may seem as old as dairying, but in fact is a 1980s innovation. Yarg is grey backwards, the name of the cheese's inventors. Then there's always ice cream. Philip Townswell of Roskillis Farm. We think of Cornwall, we think of the fishing industry, we think of mining, but dairying is just as important.
It's a very big part of the Cornish farming industry. A lot of very small dairy farmers in Cornwall. Not as many as there used to be with the decline now, but certainly a big part of our industry.
You say decline. I mean, the dairy industry in Britain has suffered quite badly over the recent years.
Very much so. With the falling prices in milk, a lot of the small dairy farmers just aren't able to farm economically. Anything sort of under probably 100 acres or so, that people just, where there used to be these very small family farms, have just disappeared. Now it's either the bigger boys who are able to do it en masse, or people who have diversified like ourselves.
How have you managed to survive?
Well, really putting value added, or sort of value adding the milk, really. So taking it from something which is worth in the open market to us probably for a litre of organic milk, depending on what the market's doing, is somewhere around about 18-19p a litre, to selling a litre of ice cream which is anything up to £3 to £4 a litre.
So you do ice cream, any other products?
The other main part of the business is fudge manufacturing as well, but we also make chutneys and jams, and we also produce on the farm apple juice and cider.
And tourism is obviously is an important thing.
It's a very big part for us. We estimate, because we don't charge people to come and look around the farm, but we have somewhere between 60 to 80,000 visitors a year here. Because we're an open farm, people can come and they can watch the milking, they can see the processes going on, they can see the ice cream being made and the fudge being made, and hopefully they'll have a cup of tea afterwards. Or. Yeah.
And you're actually expanding into other ecologically friendly ways of running a business.
Yes, there's lots of. One of the things that gets us excited is just using renewable energy sources, and we've done that for years now. We've got heat reclamation plants, so all the hot water on the farm is made from our manufacturing. So we just exchange the heat that's produced from the ice cream machinery into hot water. We have solar energy at the farm as well. We have rebed systems, but we've now just about to take delivery of our biodiesel plant. So all our, in a sense, our deliveries will be carbon neutral, which will be nice, and also a lot of our manufacturing will be carbon neutral as well. We'll be taking waste oil from the county, from the fish and chip manufacturers, processing it through, make it into registered EN standard biodiesel fuel, and then using that for whatever applications we need to use it for.
It's quite incredible. I mean, first of all, we've got we're making ice cream, it's producing heat, and you're running on old fish and chip oil and all.
Yeah, it's the one. Actually, I mean, that is the bit I like. I like lots of bits of it, but that's the bit that's getting me most excited at the moment.
Every nation in creation has its favourite drink. France is famous for its wine, its beer in Germany. Turkey has its coffee, and they serve it blacker than ink. Russians go for vodka, and England loves its tea. Oh, the factories may be roaring with the boom-a-lacka, zoom-a-lacka-wee, but there isn't any roar when the clock strikes 4. Everything stops for tea. Oh.
And now Cornwall grows the stuff. Jonathan Jones, head gardener at the Tregothnan estate.
Tregothnan is home to the first outdoor camellias over 200 years ago. I thought, wow, a collection of 200-year-old camellias. What else happens to these bushes? And I was amazed to find that the tea that we all drink is coming from a type of camellia called Camellia sinensis. And I thought, well, where's the Camellia sinensis at Tregothnan? So we made sure that we had plenty of Camellia sinensis bushes and thought, well, now we've got these, let's try and produce some tea. So that's really how it evolved.
Is the climate here similar to, let's say, Assam or something like that? I mean, most people wouldn't think it was possible.
It's not similar to Assam, but not too far from Assam is a place called Darjeeling, and that is quite similar. I was there this time last year, and the weather is very similar, a little bit warmer in the summer, but we're not looking for high-volume tea like you grow in Assam. We're looking for slow-grown, naturally irrigated, and Darjeeling is so cool and so similar to the British climate. And the Chinese leaf tea, which we grow, and the British, in fact, took to Darjeeling, is very suited to this climate. And we're sitting around here with these camellias up to 20 foot around us here. I thought, well, if we can do this and we can do Darjeeling magnolias at Tregothnan, why not try Darjeeling style tea? And a bit of research and Nuffield scholarship back in 2002, and began to realise that with a bit of patience and hard work, we could actually create a very fine tea, not just any old tea, but a tea for the connoisseurs. And that's where we are today.
When is it harvested, and how is it harvested?
It's a fairly lengthy process. It takes about 30 odd hours to, we call it plucking, that's the process of harvesting. But effectively, the bushes look like the top of a hedge, a privet hedge. And you can imagine in Cornwall how quickly things grow anyway. And we almost don't get a winter here, so it slowly grows all year round. But the real flush comes in April, and that's when you get really fine quality tea.
It's a very good English custom and a stimulant for the brain. When you feel a little weary, a cup will make you cheery, and it's cheaper than champagne. Now I know just why Franz Schubert didn't finish his unfinished symphony. He might have written more, but the clock struck 4 and everything stopped for tea.
Cheaper than champagne? Well, yes, but they do that in Cornwall too. Sam Lindo of Camel Valley Vineyard.
So yeah, to make a traditional method sparkling wine, you basically take normal wine in the tank that's been grown in a cool climate like this, and you add yeast and sugar to the wine and start a secondary fermentation. And as soon as it starts to ferment, you bottle it into the sparkling bottles and put a metal cap on it. So the fermentation happens inside the bottle, and that produces carbon dioxide that makes it fizzy, and it also produces, and the yeast basically die once they finish fermenting, and they start to rot, and that's what gives it the champagne flavours.
What are the guys doing now?
Well, basically the first machine, we chill the bottles down to 0 degrees so we don't lose so much pressure, and then the first machine basically pops off the metal cap, the sediment shoots out to the end of the bottle, and then the bottle's uprighted, so so you don't lose very much wine. And then we add a tiny amount of dosage, which is basically very sweet white wine to balance out the acidity that you get here. And then we'll put the wire lock on, the champagne cork and the wire lock, and then celebrate with it.
And of course, we're not calling this champagne, are we?
No, we call it Cornwall. For the same reason as Champagne's called Champagne. I mean, when you visit Champagne, it's a wonderful place, steeped in history and everything like that, and we suddenly thought the same thing about Cornwall.
So in the future, people might be able to enjoy not a champagne lifestyle, but a Cornwall lifestyle.
That's right. If you have champagne at a wedding now in Cornwall, no one will come.
You've got to have Cornwall.
Yes, you've got to have Cornwall. And a glass of it will make you feel brilliant as well. So.
And also, you make many different types of wine here, not just the Cornwall.
Yes, we make the normal white Cornwall and the pink Cornwall as well. And we also make probably about 3 or 4 dry white wines a year, a rosé, a red, and some off-dry wines as well, all of which we've won awards for.
Cheers to you. Very nice. It's quite a yeasty taste. It's quite.
Yeah, so we get the champagne flavours very quickly because in a cooler climate you get a much lighter flavour. So we take on the champagne flavours very quickly. So, in 18 months we get what they sort of have to wait about 3 years for.
So for champagne, the English climate, it's actually an advantage.
Yes, at the moment. It might change in a few years' time, but at the moment we're doing really well. Cornwall's particularly cool, so...
We've got a still wine here. What's this?
This is the Atlantic Dry, and one of the things about grapes that are grown in this climate, you get a much lighter flavour and more delicate aromas and flavours, and the wine is more refreshing, which makes it nice to drink in this climate, particularly in English summer afternoons and with Cornish seafood as well. One of the things they say in France is, you taste the wine and you might not like it, and they say, well, you haven't tried it with the right food in the right place, and then someone will thrust a little goujon thing and it'll taste right then. It'll balance out with the thing that you're eating.
So it is important that the wine and the food is a wine and food combination. It's not just wine on its own.
When you do have them with a meal, you can start to appreciate how they are good when you have them with the correct meal or with the correct food.
So Cornish wine with Cornish seafood is a recipe for success.
Yeah, that's spot on.
Now we're going to base a whole morning around a 3-course dinner party. Quite a good idea. So we're starting off this morning with scallops, live scallops from the Bay of St.Ives. Absolutely fantastic.
And where would an item on Cornish food be without a word on Cornish seafood? Rick Stein's restaurants have put Padstow on the culinary map, where you can do a short cookery course.
It was given to me as a birthday present, a 40th birthday present by my wife. It's always something I've wanted to do, and therefore I was very pleasantly surprised.
I love seafood, and I really wanted to get to know more techniques to cook seafood. I enjoy cooking it in my own house, and we've got a really good fish market just up the road from me, and it's all fresh, so I just love to be able to make use of it.
Well, I had a 60th birthday present from my youngest son, always been interested in fish, and thoroughly enjoy eating fish, and just would like to learn a few tricks about preparing it nicely for other people to eat.
We started off this morning with scallops. These are landed from the Bay of St.Ives. And we're going on from mackerel caught out in the estuary out here, moving on to local lemon sole throughout the afternoon.
So there's a vast amount of fish to be had around Cornwall.
Yeah, a vast amount of fish, very much so. I think a lot of fish is very underrated. Things like gurnard we're using this afternoon that are kind of used a lot for baiting like local crab pots that we use in the restaurant and we use in the school here. Beautiful tasting fish, very, very firm.
It's an unusual looking fish though, isn't it?
It is unusual. It's got these little 6 little legs on it, and it's got a very, very bony head and lots of spikes on it, and looks quite prehistoric. Very, very tasty.
Do you think in recent times people are getting more educated into good food and good locally produced food?
Definitely. These people here are really keen people. They know what they're after. They've got very high expectations when they go out for dinner now. So they have got a really kind of a good idea what they're looking for. Things are changing for the better. I think years ago, I think we would expect to go out and have a piece of grilled cod. It had been grilled in a piece of foil for like 40 minutes and served with some vile sauce. But I think these days people are expecting their piece of cod to be slightly translucent in the middle, kind of lightly cooked, with loads of flavour.
Mark Devonshire, Senior Lecturer at the Rick Stein Cookery School. Like he says, expectations are now much higher, and Cornwall has certainly risen to the challenge. Bon appétit.
With such a well-established tourist industry in Cornwall, there are many attractions for families to enjoy. The Davy family from near Falmouth will act as our guides to some of them. They are Brett, Jackie, Jennifer, 16, Tamar, 13, Lucy Jane, 8, Orion, 3 and Merrin, 1. We start with a trip to the zoo.
A cow, because that's my favourite animal.
What about wild animals? What's your favourite wild animal?
Dogs. That's me, but a horse.
Why a horse?
Because it's my favourite animal.
What would your favourite wild animal be, though? If you had to choose a wild animal.
Monkey.
I think I know the reason why, but I might as well ask you.
Because I'm one.
Here is Mark Norris, Education Officer at Newquay Zoo.
We just were attacked by a bird. What was that?
You've been dive bombed by Bob. Bob's a barley starling. He's a very, very friendly bird, and he's extremely rare. He's one of the rarest birds that we've got here. As far as we know, there are very few left in the wild. So he's waiting for a mate. We're actually trying to pair him up as part of the breeding programme. Meanwhile, he's just keeping a good look on what's going on around in the tropical house.
Oh, so I'm obviously a catch for a bird.
Well, he might display at you, so if you're a suitable kind of mate, you never know. He's cleaning himself up, he's preening himself ready.
There you go, well, that's a bit worrying. In front of me, we've got, it's like a wonderland. We've got all sorts of different animals looking at us. No glass, no bars in front of us. What have we got? We've got that little, it looks like a very, very micro deer.
Oh, the tiny little, what's called a mouse deer, or a chevrotain at the back. He's actually moving around in the shadows looking for bugs and beetles and leaves, and he moves very, very slowly, so you don't hopefully spot him very easily.
So on the branch over there we've got like a very small monkey.
Not just a very small monkey, the very smallest monkey. This is a pygmy marmoset, and it is the tiniest monkey in the world.
So we're in Newquay Zoo. We're here in the tropical house. What else has Newquay Zoo got to offer?
Well, the Tropical House is a chance to explore a lovely steamy rainforest, but quite a few of our animals live outside. Some of them are free-ranging around the zoo as well. And we have animals, as we do in the Tropical House, from all over the world, and increasingly they're increasingly rare animals.
So Newquay Zoo has a role in conservation?
We have a very active role in conservation. We have animals here that almost no other zoos outside of native countries have.
And obviously it's a great attraction for families.
It's an amazing place for families. It's one of the places where, because a lot of the animals are in family groups and are part of breeding groups and things, I think people instinctively understand families wherever they see them. So, you do have family groups, you do have kind of births, deaths and marriages, all the way throughout. So it's a great place for families to actually come along and see some unusual animals, but also they know that they're helping to support and protect them just by coming here.
Any particular favourites that the families seem to sort of get drawn to?
Well, there are one or two animals that we do public feeds for, which we do their feeds during the day because they're so popular. Things like our lions are fed every other day. Penguins are another great favourite. We have a large group of about 15 to 20 penguins. It's always great in the chick season to see some of those just after Easter. I'm also a bug keeper as well, so we have some fantastic creepy crawlies. Which
not popular for everybody.
Children love them. Parents tend to be a long way away.
And it's got indoor stuff and outdoor stuff. And it's got rides.
You like the indoors and the outdoors?
Yep.
And the rides?
Yeah, especially the Thunderbolt.
Did you like that?
Yeah, it's really good. I went on it about 9 times.
And did you ever see your dinner again?
No. You don't eat before it. You need to go to the loo before it as well.
Well, you be yourself.
Okay.
Can I cut something?
Yeah. So the rides are good, but you've got to take certain toiletry precautions. Okay.
When you come to Flambards, you can see what a huge menu we have on offer. We have lots to do and see undercover, and even more to do outside. So no matter what the weather is, you can be sure of a good day out here. Our main undercover exhibitions, the Victorian Village, which is an internationally renowned, almost unique exhibition in the UK, which shows about 50 Victorian houses, streets and traders, all undercover, life-size recreation with authentic Victoriana, and well worth a visit. And next to that we have Britain and the Blitz, which is a recreation, life-size recreation of a Blitz street in the Second World War. Again, something that really takes people back so they can experience what people really felt like on the home front during the war.
It's a lovely day now, and we see the water glistening behind us and some rides. What's going on there?
Well, we also have a lot of rides. We have 5 or 6 what I call near white knuckle rides, so we can appeal to all ages on those. We get people from 80 down to about 6 on those rides. We have the Thunderbolt, which you can see behind me, and the Hornet roller coaster, the Extreme Force, if you want to hang upside down, which is tremendous. The balloon race, water flume, and the chariot race, a good old-fashioned fairground ride, and they're all absolutely tremendous. I must ask you, are your shoes done up tightly on your feet?
They are, they're secure.
Have you got any loose money in your pockets?
Lots.
Have you got a sense of humour?
Yes.
Good, in that case, get on and we'll see you if you get back.
How are you enjoying the ride?
Yeah! I really good. It's great! Oh, fuck. Right, we'll go upside down when you look at the sky. We're going upside down. Oh, don't mind me out. We're going faster. Hello.
I'm going to be sick very soon.
Well, don't be sick on the last tour. Oh, I want another go. And me. You staying on?
You want to have another go?
Yeah, we're going to stay on. Yeah, stay on.
I'm certainly not. That was too much for me.
That was Colin Mashar, Head of Marketing at the Flambards Experience.
Have you ever been to Land's End?
Yeah.
Okay, tell us about Land's End.
It's big. It's got rocks and water.
And it's very pretty.
Why did you go there?
My godmother took me because she needed to get us out of the house.
She thinks we lead a monotonously boring existence, and she's quite a wonderful up and jumpy sort of person.
This is Falmouth Coast Guard immediate launch, over. On site, this is Falmouth Coast Guard, request immediate launch.
This is Falmouth Coast Guard paging at 7 lifeboats.
My name is Christine Waters, and I am the Visitor Centre Supervisor. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Land's End.
Immediate launch. Immediate launch. Falmouth Coast Guard.
This is TheEar Sea Rescue, which is a 20-minute motion theatre experience.
Are you rescued in it?
A certain person is rescued in it, yes, a stricken fisherman.
So we're with a stricken fisherman on rough seas.
That's correct. We will experience going down the slip on board a lifeboat, and also we will get the feeling of being on a helicopter, which is the RNS Culrose helicopter.
It's exciting, but perhaps you need a bit of a strong stomach.
Not too strong. It's not very violent.
Come, let me take you there, for I am Merlin the wise, Merlin of 1,000 winters.
There's a labyrinth. I mean, something to get lost in. What's that about?
The last labyrinth is a multi-sensory experience. It has special effects which happen all around you while you're in there. It has 4 big screens you watch. It tells of myths, legends and true stories of Land's End. You also feel the wind from the rotor blades of a helicopter. There's a shipwreck in front of you, and also you can feel the fog as it comes down, all very eerie.
I can tell you're a fan.
Absolutely.
A giant Trebigan who lived on the longships. They say he used to eat his victims and was especially fond of tenderly roasted children.
Of course, I mean, with Land's End, you must get loads of people doing the old Land's End John O'Groat, cycling, handstandings, what have you.
Yes, we do. We have about 2,000 to 4,000 people a year doing travelling variously by cycle, car, walking, and many, many other odd ways.
Can you think of any of the odd ones?
A motorised skip comes to mind.
Down on a stick of rock to build over a ship as it met its tail.
Does Orion know about cowboys and Indians? Is that?
Yeah.
Do you know about cowboys? What are cowboys?
You're not a cowboy yet. You're Indian. You used to have a bow and arrow, didn't you? And you used to shoot us.
Yeah, but I not do a bow and arrow now. It's broken.
He's come out here and give me a good hand. Yeah. Give my hand a fellow applaud like this. One on time. Oh, steady now, fella.
Howdy. I'm the County Sheriff, JB. This is Spirit of the West American Theme Park, which is based on the 1880s of the American West. And we relive the days of the American West. Chose to put it in Cornwall because it's West. The real West.
But it is quite surprising. You come through the gate, you're not expecting it, and suddenly it opens out to, well, I suppose, the OK Corral, or a Western film.
Well, that's right. I mean, I've studied the American West all my life, and probably the best comment we get is people say that, you get them come back again and again, and you ask them why they come back. They say, well, it's just stepping back into the reality of the old times. You forget the phone bill's due and the car needs taxing, and I always say, what the hell was one of them, And we capture the atmosphere of the 1880s. Great fun day out.
You're all a bit theatrical, aren't you?
Yeah, just slightly. I did a GCSE drama and got a B, which I was very happy about.
Ladies and gentlemen,
boys and girls, please welcome Mr. Phil Barnett.
Hi, we're here in St.Ives Theatre, which is the home of Kids Are Us, and it's a youth theatre group for ages 16 up to mid-20s. We're all amateurs, they're all people from the area of Penwith, and surrounding areas actually, not just Penwith, and it's children from Falmouth, Redruth, Helston, Truro, as well as St Ives, Hale, Camborne and Pendeen, as far away as that, and there in Penzance. Any kids can come along, anybody who wants to, an audition to get in. We've got 100 on the waiting list at the moment and over 100 kids on stage now, and we do a pantomime at Christmas and then 3 or 4 other shows throughout the year.
You've got visitors coming in the summer. What can they come and watch?
Yeah, they can come a variety of shows. Like for this summer that's just gone, we did our 10th anniversary production of Joseph the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and we did Dad's Army, as well as various concerts for the visitors. And we have lots of people from surrounding areas come, and lots of tourists as well. Very much a family audience. It's children and adults, but children love it because we have our own costumes, which are fantastic. We have our wardrobe mistress and wardrobe designer, Jane Badcock. She used to work for the Royal Ballet, so we have fantastic costumes, wonderful music with an orchestra, and lots of singing and dancing as well as acting.
It's a fantastic building.
Yeah, we're very lucky. It was an old Wesley chapel, and John Wesley actually preached here, I'm told, years ago, and we're very lucky we turn it into our own theatre. We've got a massive stage and our own scenery and lighting rigs, and we aim for it to be one of the finest theatres in Cornwall eventually.
Part of the kids' life?
Oh, it is, very much so. They rehearse twice a week. All year round. We have a month off just after Christmas, but it's a big part of their life. It's a hobby in which they gain confidence, and it's just fun to be in, and they make really good friends here. It is wonderful because everybody likes to show off. However shy you are, you like to get applause, and it's just having somewhere to come where you belong. It belongs to you. It doesn't belong to adults. It belongs to the kids, and it's your own place with your own friends. And these days, a lot of kids don't make big circles of friends. Where here, there's 100 of all ages to adapt to.
I like to go on long walks around either my local area or trying to go a bit beyond, because it's just so beautiful and pretty, and you just feel home, if that makes sense. You get a sense of home.
Beach, yeah, beach. Gajivri. Gajivri.
It's the best beach
in the world.
And what do you do when you go to the beach?
Go bodyboarding, go in the sea, play on the sand, go rock climbing. Look at the little animals.
There's a wealth of things to do for the family in Cornwall, whether it's high-tech theme parks or the simple pleasures the landscape can provide. Whatever it is, the most important is the joy of sharing.
Oh, for goodness sake, can you just stop being so childish? She's running